All right, let's count us down in 3, 2. I'd like to welcome CEO of Life is Now, Steph Tuss, to the Fitness Business Podcast. Steph, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
I just absolutely love your resume, your bio. Let me tell you what I love about it. I read on your website that you put in there that you are the driving force behind marketing, business development. Let me start over. Hold on, I just smuttered. I won't laugh, I promise.
Late.
Steph, what I really loved about, I saw this on your website, is in your little paragraph, you said that you're the driving force behind marketing, business development, and brilliant team culture at Life is Now. And I just felt as if our FBP family with running their own businesses, and they wear so many hats, that I think you're so relatable to them because you're wearing a lot of hats.
Yes, I wear all the hats. That's true.
And I love the fact that you just own, you're like, hey, I'm the driving force.
Yes.
You take ownership, and I appreciate that. And I think, again, our FBP family can appreciate that as well.
Thank you.
So Life is Now is the company you're the CEO of. And if I understand it correctly, it's a global consulting company that offers strategies as well as solutions for small business owners. Did I get that right?
You did. Yes, we work with small business owners in any industry. And our goal is really twofold: to help them see where they're getting in the own way of their business growth, and also to help them understand what systems, procedures, and systems, procedures, and policies to put in place so that they can grow and scale their business. Because a lot of people get into the business because they love the thing that they do. They don't get into business because they like managing people. They don't get into business because they like doing, writing emails. They get into business because they like the thing. And at a certain point, when your business is ready to grow, you need to shift your identity. And that can be really, really tough for leaders of businesses.
You mentioned last week in the Quick Fire 5, when you kind of did your 30-second elevator pitch. I love how you said that you just take a different approach to making employees feel accountable. And that's kind of be our theme today. And I think we're going to dive into that a little bit more so that our listeners can get a better understanding of what you mean by taking a different approach. So with the way the labor market is these days, we're kind of caught in a rock and a hard place, really all across the globe. And I'd like your opinion on whether you feel as if business owners should or should not hold teams accountable for their job.
So I think they should hold teams accountable for their job. But my take is that if you have the right people on the bus and if you have the proper things in place, your teams actually hold themselves accountable and do a great job of holding you accountable as well. So the different approach that we take is everything starts with the vision. I've talked to lots of business owners in all different fields, including fitness, health, coaching, you name it, any kind of business you can think of that's service-based, I've had a conversation with. And the first question I always ask is, does your business have a vision? Do you know where you want to be? Do you know what you want things to feel like, look like, act like in 3 years? And most business owners stop and say, well, I know what my vision is, but not really like what it's going to feel like and look like in 3 years. I know that I want to, triple my income, or I want to hire 10 people, or I want to, increase income this way. And unfortunately, that's actually not a vision. That's a long-term goal. And in order for your team to be really bought in and excited, they have to know why they're doing what they're doing. Like, why are they doing what they're doing? What's the end goal in place? And to do that, you really got to give them a 3D vision of where you see things going so that they can see how they fit into that picture, right? If they're just showing up to work and checking off boxes every day, they're not getting fulfillment from their job unless they just love to show up to work and check boxes off every day. Everybody wants to be a part of something bigger. In fact, there were studies done like right after COVID, and if I was prepared, I'd have these studies for you, so bear with me. But there were studies done that show what causes team members to stay in a role. And the studies came back that people are more motivated by being a part of something meaningful than they are about making more money. And the way that you make things meaningful for someone is you show them a vision that they get excited about and they can see how they can be a part of. And that's a big piece that a lot of businesses miss, because the vision is in the owner's head, but nobody else knows what that vision is. And when you have the vision, then you can ask people, how do you see yourself supporting this vision? How do you see yourself participating in this vision? And then everything is accountable to the vision. Because if someone's not doing what they've agreed to do, then the vision suffers. It's not me against you. It's not the manager against the employee. And this is what you're not doing. It's how can I support you in hitting these goals so that we can achieve the vision that we're all really excited about. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And you talked about making, the environment meaningful for the employee. Do you feel that that's where leaders fail at holding their team accountable because they're not making it feel meaningful?
Well, not only that, but they make assumptions about what their team, like what the expectations are of their team. So I'll go in and I'll say, if I walked in and I talked to one of your team members and said, what is it that you do that's of high value to your role? Like, what are you responsible for? Will they be able to tell me like that, where they bring value and what they're responsible for? And I usually get this long pause. And so that's a no then. A lot of business leaders don't take the time to work with their team members in setting, like, what are our measures of success? So if this is our vision, what are the 5 to 7 things that you do in your role that bring the most value, that you want to be held accountable for, that you're 100%, you want to be responsible for? And then you come into that meeting and have a meaningful conversation around it. Then you don't need to hold them accountable because they've agreed to it and they've created it themselves. And if they're not accountable, if they don't hit those measures of success, the conversation is, hey, these are the measures of success, the KPIs, the responsibilities that you agreed to, and you didn't hit them. What happened? Do we need to adjust them? Did you set them too high? Did something happen within the role that caused you to not be able to hit them? So it becomes a, how can I support you? Meaning the manager takes over the role of the coach in growing the person, rather than this, I'm trying to catch someone doing something wrong so I can reprimand them and fire them.
Yeah, you mentioned that in again last week in your quick fire 5 segment about, just telling somebody constantly over and over that they're not doing something right isn't necessarily you doing your job holding somebody accountable.
Well, it doesn't achieve the end goal. The end goal is the company grows. The end goal is everyone wins. Consistently telling someone they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing doesn't actually achieve anything. It doesn't fix anything.
What's your advice on giving somebody constructive criticism? Because we all know that employees are hard to get, dependable, reliable, and you might not necessarily want to let this employee go, but you also feel like you need to give them some constructive criticism just to help them grow. What's your advice on that?
So it depends on the situation. I'm a big fan of empowering people to solve their own problems, right? Otherwise, I train them to have to come to me to solve all their problems. So basically what I'll say is, so let's say it's a sales issue. Hey, I noticed that our sales numbers are down this month. And your responsibility was to make sure that 20 new people signed up. We only got 15. I'm curious to know what's your solution to fixing that problem next month. So I'm solution focused rather than problem focused. And if they give the solution and the next month they don't hit the target, then you probably need to make a change. And you probably don't have the right person in the right role.
And that happens. You can have a really good person and you might just not have them in the right role, and you recognize that, you shift them to a different role, and sometimes people really flourish. It's amazing. I've seen that multiple times.
Yep.
Can you give us some examples on how you feel accountability impacts how teams, how they get along and how they help with productivity?
Sure. So everybody wants A players on their team, right? A players are hungry, meaning they're willing to go above and beyond. They're humble, meaning they're willing to give other people accolades. and praise, and they're smart, meaning they're emotionally intelligent. So they understand how they impact other people, or how what they say or do impacts other people. The problem is that A players don't like working with B and C players. And B and C players get to stay if they're not held accountable to their agreements. And what will happen is the A player will leave. And overall, you'll have an underperforming team simply because your B or C player is dragging the rest of the team down, and your A players getting frustrated because they want to play with other A players. So it drastically decreases productivity.
I think frustration is a really good word. I think you're spot on with that. They do get frustrated.
I mean, think about it. An A player takes pride in doing their job and going above and beyond. And they see someone that's not doing that and getting away with it. They're like, I don't want to work for this joker that's not going to take this seriously and hold this person accountable for doing what they said they're going to do. I'm going to go find somebody who's actually going to walk the talk, and they leave.
Many times when you have the A player, and then you have B and C, you're trying to give the B and C constructive criticism. Sometimes leaders think that they end up being the enemy. And, obviously that's not the way we want to be looked at. So how do you feel that a leader, because I know our FBP family would love to hear your thoughts on this. How can a leader give the constructive criticism back, help to, increase the productivity, the team culture without looking like the enemy?
I love that question. Almost everyone's conflict averse, right? Like, most people don't want to have a difficult conversation. They don't want to be the bad guy. And that's the importance of the vision. When I first started this interview, if you have the vision and they've been a part of setting their own measures of success, you can come to them and say, look, the vision dictates that we hit these numbers. How can I support you in making sure that you're hitting your targets? So it's not you against them, right? It's not personal. It's, we need you to do this job better so that we all can win, because we know, and these are fitness people. Think of it like this. Let's take a step back so I can reframe this for you. Your job as the owner or manager is to be the coach of the team. The coach's job is to make sure they have the best player in each of the positions. If you've got an underperforming player in one position, your team is not going to get to the Super Bowl. It's not going to get to the world championship. It's not going to get to the end game, right? Your job is to make sure that you've got the best player in each of those roles. And I'm very forthcoming with my team about that. That's my role. My role, so that we all can win and achieve this vision, is to make sure I've got the best player in each of those roles. So if you're not the best player in that role, I'm going to do my best to help you become that best player, or it's my responsibility to allow you to go somewhere else where you can be successful. So I'm not about making anyone wrong or getting anyone in trouble. I'm about, let's see if I can build you to be what you need to be based on what the company needs. And if not, I'm going to help you find something else somewhere else. There's a great book. So I'm going to give a little book recommendation. I hope it's okay. There's a great book on this called No Rules Rules. It was written by Reed Hastings. He's the CEO of Netflix. And it's all about how they built the Netflix culture. And it's built on that premise. Everybody buys in. Everybody sets their own measures of success. Everybody's empowered to do their job. Everybody holds everybody else accountable because everybody is behind the vision. And the vision is really the leader. I'm just the facilitator and the builder of people to make sure we get to the vision. So it's never this butting of heads of, hey, you didn't hit your targets. What the hell, right? It's, hey, in order for us to achieve this vision, we need to make sure we've got this. And I see that didn't happen. How can I support you in making sure this does happen? Or what are your suggestions to make sure this happens next month? Give them a second chance. And if they don't hit it, then they got to make a change, and they'll be expecting it because they know that that's the culture.
I had a guest on last January. So when I say last January, January of 2022, his name was Dre Baldwin, and he does these motivational quotes every day. And it's so funny because today his quote of the day was, "Successful people initiate tough conversations." And I'm just like, absolutely, 100%, because nobody likes to initiate that tough conversation, but successful people do. I like that one. So it's funny you just mentioned the same exact thing.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about productive conflict and healthy debate, and they're pretty crucial for innovation and growth. Could you share with all of our FPP families some practical strategies for fostering an environment where different ideas are, encouraged, and difficult ideas, or I'm sorry, different ideas are valued without having it turn into a negative or a hostile experience? This happens a lot in team meetings. You want to have these team meetings, and as the leader, you're like, I want everybody's input. And then people start giving your input, and it could sometimes go south.
So it all starts with making sure that you're building psychological safety within your organization, right? If you don't have psychological safety, you're not going to have innovators. You're going to have a bunch of yes people that will tell you exactly what you want to hear because they're worried about losing their job if they disagree or if they rock the boat. But the truth is, in any organization that grows, the culture needs to be that the best idea wins. Well, if people are afraid of sharing their ideas, even if they're terrible ideas, if they're afraid of sharing their ideas, the company drastically slows down its growth, right? Because then all the ideas have to come from you, and you're only one person, and that's not like this is a meritocracy, not a what's I can't think of the word. Dictatorship. Oh my gosh. So the idea is that the best idea wins, but if people are afraid to share their ideas because they're afraid they're going to be made fun of, or they're afraid they're going to be made wrong, then you don't get healthy debate. If you can build a culture of psychological safety, which means people aren't afraid to say what they think, everyone's ideas are valued, then you can have that. And there's lots of ways that you can build psychological safety. The first of which is making sure that you, as the leader, if you make a mistake, that you sunshine your mistake. So you make it okay for you to be wrong, and you show that to your team members that you were wrong. You don't beat yourself up over it. You say, wow, I made this mistake. Here's why I made this mistake. Here's what I'm going to change so it doesn't happen again. And here's what I learned from it, right? So that they understand that mistakes are okay, meaning bad ideas are okay, bad suggestions are okay. It's that everyone is accepted so that they feel like they can brainstorm, they can give ideas.
I feel as if that is initiated back when we are in like elementary school, and the teacher always say, no question is a bad question. And then you raise your hand, you ask a question, and everybody giggles in the classroom, and you feel like a fool, and you're like, I'll never ask a question ever again.
Yes, a school is not a psychologically safe place. It was not okay to make mistakes at school. Mistakes meant humiliation and embarrassment, right? So we have to untrain that out of our team members, because they're pulling those past experiences into their present experiences, whether they're conscious of it or not.
And I always feel that even if somebody says something that you're like, sometimes that initiates brainstorming, and you can just build upon it, and maybe you get from, it takes you from point A to all the way to successful point B. That's the way I always looked at it.
Exactly. It sparks ideas. That's the whole purpose of brainstorming. Like, well, tell me more about that. And did you think about this? And what would happen if we did this? And what if we tweaked this to do this? And it becomes a jumping off point. That's how most good ideas and good innovation starts. It's a collaboration, and it's debate.
Well, I appreciate your whole topic about psychological safety, because what we've been trying to do here on the Fitness Business Podcast is we always have all these guests on, and they come on, and they tell about their great success stories and everything that's gone right for them, and this is how you do it, and follow these 5 steps, and you're going to have this amazing successful business. And one day we were in a meeting, and I started saying, you know what though, we just make it sound like we're so perfect all the time, and all of our guests are perfect. There's got to be guests out there that have had issues and problems and mistakes and pitfalls and embarrassments. And we've been trying to get more of our guests to share those on there. And, how do you clean and pick yourself back up after making a bad decision? That, I really appreciate that you talk about that. So that was such a great answer to that question.
Look, every single business owner has made massive blunders. It's how you learn. I have made so many mistakes, but it has to be okay for that to happen, because how else do you learn? You don't learn to walk by not falling. You have to fall a gazillion times as a baby to learn how to walk. Like, I bet you if you ask the question, what is one mistake that you learned the biggest lesson from, you would hear crazy stories from the business owners that come on here. I mean, I myself had $100,000 mistake very early on in my business, and it taught me so many things that have carried me forward to today that have probably prevented me from losing millions of dollars rather than $100,000. So there's lots of mistakes when you're owning a business. And it's those little ones that you admit to your team that give them permission to be human too. It's super important for psychological safety.
It really is important. And, with social media and everybody sees, if I'm talking about fitness clubs, these beautiful fitness clubs and people teaching a perfect class and, um, with the perfect outfit and they look perfect. And it's just, I felt like we were kind of at the Fitness Business Podcast, we were kind of buying into that too, like, oh, look at this perfect gym and this perfect owner and how they built all this success. So I just am like, oh, we got to be truthful about this. We need to hear about the $100,000 mistake because I guarantee somebody out here in our FBP family has made the same mistake or at least one that could be compared to it.
Yep.
Well, Steph, before we end, is there just any other advice, tips, anything else that you'd like to just conclude with today before we end our episode?
I really think it's about defining your role and the importance of your role. And that is that you are the coach. It's your responsibility to make sure you've got the best people in each of those roles, because then everybody wins. And don't be afraid of having those hard conversations. There are things that you can do that make them less hard. If you have a vision in place, if you have your measures of success and they're agreed upon in place, suddenly it's not you versus them, it's you for them. And they get that. And it creates this really amazing team culture where everyone is striving to be a part of and experience that end vision.
Well, thank you, Steph, so much for coming on and just, sharing your triumphs and also your downfalls as well. And we just really appreciate you taking time out of your day to share your journey with all of our Fitness Business Podcast family.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay, that's a wrap. I think I made one mistake there. So very good. Great job. All right, let's wrap it up with the Fitspiration question. Here's how it's going to work. I'm going to ask you the question. You can do it like tip 1, tip 2, tip 3, 1, 2, 3, however you want to word it. And then when you're done, just pause. There's no follow-up question to this one.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Let's count us down in 3, 2. Steph, what are your top 3 tips for holding staff accountable?
Sure. My first tip is to make sure that you have a vision in place and it's clearly communicated to your team. And by vision, I mean a 3D world of where you see your business in 3 years, what it looks like, what it feels like, what's happening in each of the departments, so that people know, your team members know why they're doing what they're doing. Second, I highly recommend agreed upon accountability points. So if you're going to hold someone accountable, we need to make sure that you're agreed on what you're holding them accountable to. Otherwise, everything's based on assumptions. So create measures of success with your team. Ask them what 5 to 7 things they do that are the most valuable to the success of the company, and then have a meeting with them to discuss that and agree upon 5 to 7 that they will be held accountable for, and they'll hold themselves accountable for. And then third, don't be afraid to revisit that conversation and say, hey, you agreed to these measures of success. You didn't hit them. How can I help you? Like, what needs to happen for this to be hit the next time? So that you're coming to them as an ally, not as an adversary, that you're coming to them to support them so that they can be successful, not so that you can gather excuses to fire them.